Well, hello again. Today we're going to go ahead and put the terminal strips in. This will be the grounding strip, and after I get it up and in, then I'll go ahead and solder a wire between these two holes at the bottom. Flip it over here so you can see better. I'll just put a jumper wire across there, a bare jumper wire, and then that'll make both of these ground. I'm securing it to the chassis. I've already drilled the hole. I got the screw through, and I put a star washer there. That'll be on the bottom side. And once I get this on, then I'll put another star washer on the top. This one right here. Like so. And then the nut will go on. So I'll have a star washer above and below the contact point with the chassis. Very important. On second thought, I think I'll put the jumper wire in first. I got plenty of room to do it up here, but why give myself a problem, right? This is why I keep these little short stubby pieces of wire. Leftover cuttings is what I call them. That's why I keep them around. I got black ones. I got all different colors. And you never know when you're going to need one. Well, I need one right now. I decided to whip out my third hand for this job here. It makes life a whole lot easier. If you don't have one of these third hands, they're real cheap. You need to get one. It's something you don't use all the time. But you got a couple of magnifying glasses on them. You got some alligator clips that hold them. I think I took one of the alligator clips off, if I'm not mistaken. Kept getting in the way. But you can put it back on, and it just holds it. You just clamp the brown board in and put your wire on and solder it up. It works. And it shifts around to all different ways and shapes and everything. Can't beat it. Now for this soldering job, it's a small one. There's nothing to it really. But I put some flux on there because I want a good, clean, solid solder joint. You know, it's just one of those things. It's a ground. You need it to operate your B+. And I want it to be good. I want it to last a long time. And then, of course, you clean it with your alcohol brush. Get all that flux off there, that brown flux front and back. Get the back too. Get it nice and clean. So you got some nice, clean, shiny joints right there, two of them. They look really good. Alright, now let's get it on the chassis. All secure, ready to go. Now the second one, I don't need to drill a hole. All I got to do is glue it. I can glue it to the chassis. I try not to drill a hole at all. I don't like doing that, but you know, sometimes in a situation like this, it's probably the best, most efficient way to go. It's entirely up to you. I may move this over this way a little bit. I don't know. It's going to study a little bit. At first I was going to stick it down in here, but that's too much wire. Too much wire. I just want to bridge the I'm going to try to use the original electrolytic caps and just bridge them across. And the wires will be too short, but not a problem. I can splice wires on each one. These things are too expensive nowadays to be just wasting. And we know they work well because the radio plays perfectly. But we're only going to use 3. Which means I may have to come back and actually add the 4th one. I don't know. I haven't heard from my mentor Brendan lately. I don't know what his deal is. He's been gone for a week. No messages or anything. I contacted Ron down in Florida, Ron C. And he said that Brendan might be having some problems with his internet. Well, maybe so. But the last time he disappeared like this lengthy period of time, he wound up in the hospital and he was gone for 3 months. I didn't know what the deal was. He never contacted us or anything, so hopefully we'll hear from him soon. So right now it's a cup of coffee, and then I'll come back and glue this in. I'll be putting the other terminal strip right there. I'm going to glue it at that point right there. I roughed up the metal where I'm going to be gluing, and I also roughed up the bottom of the terminal strip, that tab right there with the grinding wheels. Just barely took that smooth shininess off so I get a good mechanical bond there. And right now I'm mixing up the old glue. This is JB Quick. Doesn't need a whole lot. There's not going to be any strain on that, on those wires. There won't be any strain on the terminal strip at all, unless somebody gets in there with his big glommy hands, 10 years from now. Well, if he does, it's his problem then. I get these terminal strips glued in by putting first the glue on the chassis, and then I put a little glob of it on the tab itself. Give it a few minutes, not a few minutes, because this stuff supposedly dries in 4. But you usually have about a minute to play with it. You want it to be a little bit tacky, just a little bit. So when you press it down on there, don't press it hard, just press it down on there nice and easy. The glue will shoot up through the hole like it already has here, which makes for a good, makes almost like it's got a screw on it or something. Well, there she is. I think what I'm going to do is when this thing totally dries, I'm going to pile a little more glue on the top. I want a good solid, I don't want it to be breaking loose at any time soon. It won't, unless, like I said, somebody gets their hands in there. Alright folks, we already know from looking at the schematic earlier that these three capacitors are electrolytic. There are capacitors and all of them connect, the negative connects to ground. There's one right there. By the way, see how one is straight, the other's curved? Later on they came out with that, meaning that the curved one, the curved side is the negative. Never used to be that way. It used to be just a couple of straight lines and you had to make sure you knew what you were doing. Or check with somebody who did. These down here, same thing. Curved line goes to the negative, okay, to ground. Curved is negative, remember that. Alright, so all this means is we have to take all the negatives from those three capacitors and hook them to the ground. I mean, how can it get any easier than that? From here on out, we don't even need the schematic. All we got to do is follow the wires. This chassis is so simple. This is like nothing there, and what is there is easy to follow. I mean, it just can't get any better, you know. I love chassis like this. All we have to do, now we know that all the negatives go on these two terminals right here. Okay? So, easy peasy. Now, here's one of the terminals. Forget the capacitors for now, okay? Just go by we know everything works. So all we have to do is concentrate on the wires. So I have a wire here, this red one here. I got a red one here. And I have a black choke wire coming off this choke, and they all come to this same place, okay? So all I have to do is move those three wires over to like here. Just take them. I'll have to put a splice of wire on this little short choke wire there. It's just pretty short. It worked okay for where this capacitor was located, but over here it was going to have to be a little bit longer. And these wires I have, I'm going to use a solid wire for this. It's not going to have any flexibility to it. We don't have to worry about it. Once it gets in place, it'll stay there forever. It's not like it bends or moves or anything. It's just once it's soldered, it stays. So let me go ahead and move those three wires and splice this black one onto this choke wire right here. Get that thing spliced on, then move that. We're going to go with the bottom one, I think, right here. Get this over with. The rest is a piece of cake, because over here we're only going to have a red wire and the other choke wire. And then the last one is just a brown wire, I believe. Yeah, just a brown wire. One brown wire that goes all the way around the chassis. Let me see. Yeah, all the way around the chassis. Comes over here and it hooks to pin 2 of the 6AQ5. Okay? That's nothing to it. Right there. That's, I mean, if you can't figure that out, you need to take up knitting or something, okay? Let's get these three off of that terminal first. Now I'll be using my Hyco solder extractor to remove the solder. There's so much of it on there, on those wires. There's a ton of it on. They just loaded it up. It's going to work real good. Now, what you have here is nothing but a soldering iron attached to a vacuum source. That's it. So what I'm going to do is treat it just like any other soldering iron. Keep your tip clean at all times. In between extractions, you'll be fine. Alright, let's see if I can do this first one without burning everything to pieces. You got to be careful with this thing. It can be dangerous. Get this electrical cord out of the way. Get this down where I want it. Start the solder melting. Is it going to start melting or not? There we go. Finally, jeez. Let me clean the tip a little more. It looks like it looks like when he soldered this, he soldered around the insulation on the choke wire. Ugh. Well, I don't know how the last guy did this and soldered it up like that, but I'm not going to waste any more time on it. I could not get that solder to melt out and extract because there's so much insulation embedded in the solder. That's exactly what I've been telling you all along. Keep your iron clean. Don't solder. You can't solder the insulation, okay? So I'm going to damage this thing up a little bit, which just doesn't bother me a bit because we don't need that terminal anyway. This is horrible. Let's see if I can't extract a little bit more, but I don't think I'm going to. This is not going to be fun. Well, it just wants to keep giving me a hard time. Well, I'm not going to tolerate a hard time. I have other tools at my disposal. Yes, I do. There's one wire removed. You see how easy it is when you have the right tool for the right job, I guess? This is a chop job, so of course it has to be the right tool. There's the second wire. Now the one I worry the most about is that choke wire. There's not much to play with there. I don't know about that. I'm going to have to play with that just a little bit longer. I want as much length as I can get because I'm going to have to strip it back. I don't know. I'd like to save as much wire as I can on that electrolytic as well. Let me work on it a little bit longer. Well, that solder doesn't want to melt, so I got no choice. I'm going to have to just get in there and go for it. This tooth extraction has got to come out. We cannot have it like this any further, any longer. So off goes the wire for the electrolytic. And let me turn my cutters around the other way. I want to get as close as I can. Off goes the wire for the choke. Get them both out of the way. We got plenty of wire to work with on the choke. It's got to reach over here to this, remember. Now we get this up out of the way, and now we get our vengeance. Our vengeance. We are now avenged, okay? I might even do a little bit more on that. I don't know. I'm not sure my vengeance has been quelched or quenched or whatever the word is. I don't know. Yeah, I think I can get a little bit more out of there. All right. By the way, my grandson, James, who's in the Air Force, he's been over in the Middle East for the last 6 months. He is now out, and he landed at the Little Rock airport just a few minutes ago. His wife went to pick him up, and he is glad to be back in the States. I told him you got back just in time because there's no telling what's going to happen over Iran. Anyway, I'm happy he's back. Now here's the 2 splice wires I'll be using on the choke wire and on this little short red wire. Okay, and the way we're going to do this is I made little coils on the end, like I always do when I put components in. I also use the coil. I usually call it the coil method. It works great for me. Works great for other people who've tried it too, from what I understand. Anyway, I strip back the wire. I'll put a little tin on that before I start. Just enough to give it a little tinning, and then I'm going to slip this down over the wire like that. That coil, see, it holds itself right in place. I don't even have to hold it. You zero in on there so you can see that. Then I'm just going to go ahead and solder it, and then put a piece of heat shrink over the top, across there. Shrink it down, and then go ahead and fasten it. The choke wire I'm going to fasten to these bottom holes down here. These down here. I'm going to fasten it to this one here. I think that's the one. No, it'll be the next one up. It'll be this one right here. I'm going to put that choke wire in there. That'll give me more room in the hole for the 2 red wires and the positive of the electrolytic capacitor. You'll see. Alright, both of the wires have been soldered on. I'm ready to go. I'm going to take a pair of needle nose. I'll squeeze that wire together there to get rid of that open spot. And because it'll try to catch on the heat shrink when I push it down the wire. But this one right here, I've already got the heat shrink positioned on it. We're going to go ahead and push it all the way down across like that. Then all I got to do now is hit it with the heat gun. You know, I've seen some really good electronic repairmen on the internet, on YouTube, and they do a really good job and everything, but then when it comes to heat shrink, they pull out the old cigarette lighter. Look, I recommend you don't use a cigarette lighter, okay? I recommend that you break down and get yourself, you don't have to get an expensive one. You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot or Walmart or whatever, order one online, get a cheap one. And it's not like you're going to use it 24 hours a day, so it doesn't have to be really expensive, and it'll last you forever. And hold it in place a little bit so the wind from the heat gun doesn't blow it out of the way like that. You want to get it up there and leave it where it's at. You'll get a nice even shrink all the way around. But, you know, if you want to use a cigarette lighter, knock yourself out. We are ready to solder it up. I'm going to go ahead and solder it up, and then after I get it all done, I'm not going to solder the the negative. I may need to use that hole for the next capacitor. This is just the positive side. Remember, the negatives go to these two terminals here, and the positive go to these over here. So I'll go ahead and solder this up, clip that wire off. I got an extra wire right there that needs to clip off. And then I'll do the same thing with this one. This one I've already gotten loose. That's probably the one I'm not going to be using. But all I have on this one is the the capacitor itself, this red wire, and then the other side of the choke wire. 2 wires in the cap, piece of cake. Should go right down in there. And then this one here, it will be way apart from the rest, and I'll probably stick it right here, okay? And that gives me a terminal joint if I ever need one right here. I doubt that I will, but you never know. I may have to go ahead and hook up this second cap after all. I don't know. Well, let's get her soldered up and finished up. Well, that's it, folks. The 3 terminals that were on the original capacitor are now gone. I don't know why it's so dark here. I've got 2 lights on this thing, and all the negatives are hooked to here, which is hooked to ground, and all the positives are hooked to, get clear here, all the positives are hooked to here, here, and here, and out to the respective wires where they had to go. And that is it. And now the question is, are we going to need this 4th capacitor or not? I don't know. Tell you what, let's fire it up and see what happens if we get a big hum. By the way, Brandon, I got a hold of Brandon. Some of my emails were going to his spam file. I don't know why. So I sent him one. Again, I haven't heard back from him, so maybe that one went into the Ethernet somewhere either. I don't know. So everything is good. Everything. Now this one capacitor had to go in horizontal because the leads were so short. But it's fine. It's fine. Let's fire it up, see what happens. Well, I must have done something right. We're getting stations in. At least it's not, and it's not humming at all. Let me turn the volume down here. I don't hear a thing. You see, that's what happens when you hooked new capacitors to the legs of the old capacitor. You get hum. And that's why he had to add the other one. If he would have, done it the way I did it in some form or fashion with some terminal strips, he wouldn't have that. He would have never had to hum. So this is doing pretty good. I hope by the next video my voice is back. Every spring, this pollen and crap and everything in the air just tears me up. I won't be good until the middle of May probably. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to find that Mexican station right now. It usually comes in really loud. There we go. Okay, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to wrap this up in the next video. I hope. I want to spray the chassis. I want to do something to the front cover here. I may remove the entire faceplate. And I'd like to get some silver back here. And I put an ad on. I put an ad in the Antique Radio Forum for a HQ-100 label tag, name tag that goes here. It's missing. And it's missing off of a lot of these old Hamiltons and Hammarlunds. They just kind of fell off, I guess. I don't know. I guess they were glued on. I don't know. I think there was one here. I don't see where it was, though. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and call this one quits. Got any questions, let me know. Until next time, this is John.